COVID keeps staying one step ahead. Case numbers are up again and the virus is spreading deeper into regional New South Wales. A large part of the state's north has just gone into lockdown, including Tamworth and Byron Bay. We'll have more on that soon. But in Sydney, COVID has taken another life. A woman in her 90s has died. Another 283 people have caught the virus. Just over 100 were in isolation while infectious. And Berejiklian is facing the risk of a backbench revolt after forcing some tradies to be vaccinated to get back to work. State political reporter Ashley Raper begins tonight's coverage.
If ever there was an incentive to get the shot, for many, this is it.
We are here in queue to do the vaccination, to get back to work.
Construction workers in COVID hotspots can pick up tools from Wednesday on the condition they're vaccinated.
If it has to be done, it has to be done. There's nothing much we can do about it.
George Diab runs a construction company with 100 employees. He says he was shocked by the rule.
It's very unfair. I mean, it's saying that it can't be forced on people, but it is being forced on people. I mean, it's either you get it done or you sit at home without pay, without income. So, really, we're getting forced to do it.
And it's causing dissent within government ranks.
Our government needs urgently to pull back on this one area of forcing vaccines upon people, or it is just going to be a bloodbath at the next election, I fear.
Obviously, the New South Wales government respects people's views on these matters, but we also appreciate that during a very difficult time, you need to think about the greater good.
The death toll has risen. A woman died in palliative care in Sydney's north. She was in her 90s and unvaccinated. The number of new cases is remaining at a consistent level. Less than half can be linked, while at least 64 were infectious in the community.
We are working very hard to maintain this and to continue to look at opportunities for driving down the case numbers.
If cases don't go down and rules relax, an easing of border restrictions is unlikely to follow.
We can safely assume that other states will remain with closed borders to New South Wales for much of the rest of this year, whilst we do drive those vaccination rates up into the higher levels.
If they open up at 50%, I can see our mob up in Queensland and go, so thanks, you can stay where you are.
The Premier isn't dwelling on that point. Berejiklian seems determined to ease some restrictions and get some services back up and running if that 50% vaccination target is met this month.
I'm sure if you asked the majority of people in our state, would you look forward to more freedoms than what we have now? I think the answer would be yes. At the moment now, nobody from New South Wales can travel anywhere anyway.
Locked down and locked in New South Wales for a while yet. Ashley Raper, ABC News, Sydney.
More than 100,000 people in the state's northeast have been plunged into lockdown. Bronwyn Herbert is live for us in Lismore. Bronwyn, which areas are affected?
Juanita, the local government areas of Byron, Ballina, Lismore and the Richmond Valley are all affected by this lockdown. Now, what's happened is that a man aged in his 50s who had COVID became sick and was taken to Lismore Base Hospital. The Byron Shire Mayor has told the ABC that this man who had travelled up from Sydney had been spending time with his wife who had COVID. What's made this particularly challenging up here is that the man has not used QR codes or checked into facilities, which makes it obviously difficult for police and for contact tracers. Dr. Kerry Chant said that he has been infectious in the community for some time.
We understand he did travel from Sydney earlier in towards the end of July. He is currently being re-interviewed and we are also arranging urgent testing of his 2 household contacts.
The lockdown is expected to be lifted next Tuesday, Juanita.
Bronwyn Herbert reporting there. An hour earlier, Tamworth went into lockdown. Authorities are worried about a woman who visited from Newcastle late last week while she was infectious.
Not a single case today, but an abundance of caution. A visit by an infected woman last Thursday has delivered an unwanted scenario for Australia's country music capital.
As a precaution, the health experts have recommended that we lock down Tamworth for 1 week.
2 of the 5 venues the woman visited included a popular cafe and a hotel.
We ask everybody particularly to be calm, be measured, be tested and be vaccinated.
The police will be out in numbers, highly visible. If you are doing the wrong thing, you can expect to be spoken to by the police.
The calls to testing are being heard with long queues at the local clinic. Elsewhere in town, businesses are bracing for a downturn in trade.
I've been mentally preparing and I guess strategically planning for this for a couple of weeks now. I felt it was on its way.
Earlier today, it almost felt like business as usual in Tamworth. That's not the case tonight. The hope is that by doing this for the next 7 days, some sense of normality can then return. And residents in the neighbouring Hunter region are anxious as to whether they'll come out of lockdown later this week. There were 6 new infections, bringing the local caseload to 26.
I think it may extend for a little bit longer.
If we're going to try to avoid this thing, we've really got to do our best. I do feel for the businesses that are suffering.
A Newcastle basketball stadium is one of the latest exposure sites. The parents and children who attend are among thousands of regional residents wondering how far Delta has spread. Patrick Bell, ABC News, Tamworth.
The state's first high school students have begun getting vaccinated in Sydney. Let's go to Tim Swanston now at Olympic Park. Tim, thousands of Year 12s lined up today to get their Pfizer jab.
Yeah, Juanita, almost 3,000 Year 12 HSC students got their Pfizer jab today. It's also fully booked for tomorrow, some 3,500 students. Now, Western Sydney Local Health does expect that daily vaccination figure to rise each day. They've got 20,000 Pfizer vaccinations to give for first doses for the Year 12 students in the 8 local government areas of concern, and certainly in a sign that the demand is definitely there. Almost half of those that are eligible have signed up to receive the vaccine. The senior class of 2021. They've endured 2 lockdowns and long stretches of homeschooling. Now they're some of the first teens in the state to get the vaccine.
Yeah, welcome guys.
Some with a touch of trepidation.
A bit nervous, but yeah, I'm not a fan of needles.
Kind of nervous, to be honest.
Thousands will be vaccinated this week. Many hope it'll mean these extraordinary times become a touch less so.
I think it's a key to having a normal life.
I'm glad that we got the vaccination out of the way and we can return to school as early as possible.
Some not as eager to hit the classroom.
I'm not too excited to go back to school, but yeah.
Lauren christened the new COVID Vax Centre and scores followed. These Year 12 students from Sydney's 8 areas of concern don't know when they'll be back in class, but they're feeling more hopeful about their final exams.
The thing about the case numbers...
But a swift return is doubtful, given the virus is spreading. In Penrith's east, 12 suburbs now face the toughest restrictions. It's prompted a testing blitz as cases climb across the area. The push to get vaccinated is also getting more personal.
It's really difficult seeing people in the ICU getting so sick and suffering what will be quite long-term consequences.
Almost 70 COVID patients are now in intensive care. Health officials say they believe the hospital system is responding well to that pressure. But at the weekend, 7 patients were taken to Wollongong Hospital, some from here at Liverpool Hospital.
We have offered our support to them to transfer people in because they're under considerable pressure.
But the Chief Health Officer doesn't agree it's a sign the system's under stress.
For many people that live in Liverpool or Campbelltown, Wollongong is actually closer than the city. So we use all of our assets, and that includes Wollongong.
An asset with another tool, a disused department store is now a mass vaccination centre in Wollongong. The aim, 2,500 jabs a day, but a lack of supply currently means less than a third of that. Tim Swanston, ABC News, Sydney.
The lockdown in regional Victoria will be lifted at midnight. Residents living outside of Melbourne will revert to the restrictions in place before the recent outbreak began, allowing schools and hospitality venues to reopen. Melbourne itself had 11 new COVID cases today, and Queensland authorities have confirmed the link between a reef pilot and a taxi driver who both tested positive for COVID in Cairns, plunging the region into a 3-day lockdown.